Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Keep Indiana Learning's book study on UDL and Blended Learning by Katie Novak and Catlin Tucker. My name is Melissa Wally, and I am a digital learning coach with Keep Indiana Learning. If you're brand new to our book study, welcome. If you've been with us all along, we are very happy to have you back. Today's episode is focusing on Chapter 8. This chapter is titled Solitude and Communities of Practice. And I know that I could use some solitude right about now as we are just wrapping up Thanksgiving and heading into the holiday season. A little bit about myself. I work for Hanover Community Schools in Cedar Lake. I'm an educational technology specialist / tech coach / whatever else comes my way. I've been in education for 25 years, and I definitely pride myself on being a lifelong learner. Joining me today for our book study is my BTF, my best techie friend, Diana Knox, as usual. And today's guest is one of our newer Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coaches, Sarah Atkinson. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sarah Atkinson. I am the Instructional Technology Coordinator for the Duneland Community School District, which is located way up north in Chesterton, Indiana. One of the coolest parts of my job is that I get to coordinate our instructional coaching team. So when I heard about this opportunity to discuss this chapter in particular, and about communities of practice in context of UDL, I was like so excited. So thank you for having me. Prior to being what I am now, I had the privilege of being an instructional coach and also an elementary teacher.
Almost forgot to unmute my mic before I started talking. So Sarah, we're so glad you're with us today. And it's been fun having you as part of our Keep Indiana Learning digital learning coaches this year. So my name is Diana Knox. I am an instructional technology specialist for Clay Community Schools in Brazil. This is my 7th year in this EdTech professional experience and my 25th year in education overall. Prior to this, I taught Spanish, English, theater, all sorts of fun, creative things. And I love that I now am in this educational technology realm where I've been able to meet all sorts of amazing people. And this book study has been a phenomenal experience to kind of dive deeper into UDL, get different perspectives from the people that have joined us. And it's really hard to believe that we're on chapter 8 and there's only one chapter left. So we're excited to have you with us today. When we dig into chapter 8, as Melissa said, it's solitude and communities of practice. And we're ready to dive right in and start talking.
You're right, Diana. I also can't believe that here we are wrapping it up. We started this and we decided to bring in some of our guests. And I think that actually ended up being the best part about this book study is bringing in everyone and expanding our circle even more and just deeper relationships and bringing in new perspectives. I think that's been my favorite part of this. So I like that perspective and it works itself well into this chapter. So the opening of chapter 8, it's called We're Not in Walden Anymore. And I started reading it and I was reading what Katie was saying, thinking about what I know or what I thought I knew about Henry David Thoreau and his isolation and as he was in his cabin writing and just the background knowledge I thought I had. And then I read about how really I've been misinformed and how actually he was this social person and his cabin really was this little man cave in the woods. And that made me giggle. And that he actually met up with his friends and family and threw these parties in the woods. And the way that she describes it, the way that she mentions his annual melon party and how it really was quite the event and it just gave me a different perspective on him and his isolation as I thought. Wasn't quite that way. So my point is that he wasn't this hermit that went out and lived in the woods by himself, pen to paper alone for all this time. He actually was a social butterfly, and he spent this time writing by himself, but then went out, was this social butterfly, engaging with others, probably collaborating and gathering ideas and content to use for that time when he went to work. And so the comparison that Katie made to educators creating curriculum is just spot on. We shouldn't be holed up in the woods or our classrooms working alone. And we need to continue to embrace that idea of building relationships, welcoming one another, to co-collaborate, and then connecting to build one another up, just like we are so excited to bring Sarah in. Right, Sarah?
Yeah, being an educator is really challenging work, and it's also really emotional work. And when educators work in isolation without the comfort of a professional community, it can really take a toll and make the experience feel really negative and sometimes even traumatizing. But when we build relationships with other educators, we're able to create an atmosphere where everybody feels valued and welcomed. And when we feel that way, we're much more likely to be actively engaged and creative and successful. UDL is a complex framework, and it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of practice to implement it well. And doing this kind of work together makes total sense. In this book, the author gives some really great ideas on how to shift school culture toward building relationships and honoring the voices of learners. And when they're asked questions on how to do this, their answer is kind of reflective. It's, are you modeling this shift with your colleagues? Honor their voices, create engaging and rewarding professional learning opportunities for them. And when you give them opportunities to experience these high quality learning episodes themselves, they're more likely to transfer this experience onto their students. So they gave some really good ideas on how to design these kinds of experiences for our colleagues. One is giving colleagues an opportunity to participate in designing their own professional learning and their own faculty meetings and their own social gatherings. When they have the opportunity to kind of be the author and the creator, they're more invested. They get to see how these things work, and it's more engaging for them to participate in. The book also gave another really good idea on how to find ways for colleagues to share their own personal experiences. A good example of that from my own experience is last year in the school that I was instructional coaching at. We began building our own background on standards-based grading, and we led that work with sharing some of our own personal experiences with A through F grading. And it was this very meaningful way to open the conversation and really establish connections with each other, because we had things in common in our previous experience that we didn't otherwise know. So giving people the opportunity to share their own personal experiences is a great way to establish this modeling of UDL with our colleagues. Another great idea in the book was modeling universal design with our colleagues by listening to their feedback. Are we really listening to feedback on the learning experiences that we facilitate with one another? Are we really listening to what people have to say? And are we responding to it? Because if we want to honor our colleagues' voices and model doing this with our own students, being flexible and responding to their feedback is really important. So I found those to be some pretty good ideas on how to kind of model this with our colleagues while establishing that sense of community.
Oh, I love that. That's some really good. I think me, the social person, I thrive on that community. If you've been around me ever, I say this all the time. When I first started in this position in particular, I was the only one in my district. I was really one of the only ones in my area. So it could be very lonely sometimes. And so I'm so grateful for the opportunities that Indiana has as a whole to get together and to collaborate in different groups. But I got to tell you, the best thing for me was when I met Melissa, because we bonded over a love of coffee and trying to find that at a conference. But through that connection, we both have just continued to build and grow. So I think, like, man, those communities of practice, as I was reading this chapter, I think of all the things that we do with Keep Indiana Learning, our digital learning coaches, when we have our meetings and we talk about the different ideas, and we're so bonded in our love of certain things. UDL is a top one that we've all been talking about right now, but there are other things too that we see with STEM and with computer science, or the standards-based grading has come up more and more. And I love that this gives us a community to discuss and learn in that. So I love the end of the chapter starts talking about why it's important to develop a community of practice with your peers. And, you know, geography doesn't define who our community of practice has to be. Here, the three of us are today talking, and we're all in different parts of the state. Although you two are a little closer together than me, maybe. But I love the definition of the community of practice. It's a group of individuals that share a common concern, a set of problems, or a deep passion for a topic. And the three characteristics that communities of practice possess that set them apart from other groups that they talked about, I thought was really fantastic as well, because these three characteristics, and then kind of a little bit about them, it's that shared domain of interest, which seems very simple to think about. I think of like the work I do with the Indiana Canvas user group. We are very bonded in our use of Canvas and our desire to do better for our students and our teachers and to learn from one another. So that shared domain of interest is important there. The community is composed of members that have strong relationships. So the longer you get to be around somebody, or that you get to know them better, or you create opportunities to get to know them better by listening and learning what their interests and their focuses are. And then it's the shared practice aimed at developing resources and building knowledge that can benefit not only you, but others that you bring into that community. But because we're working to build that deeper understanding that in our case as educators, it's going to benefit our students for sure, but then also in our positions, it's going to benefit the teachers, and then it trickles down to the students. So the other thing I think that it's easy to think about, just like any kind of relationship, your community of practice needs nurtured and fed to build it and keep it strong. And so they talk about that once that community of practice is developed, it's important that you spend time investing in it to continue to build and grow it. And they gave some ideas of ways that you could do that, whether you're doing a book study, like we are kind of right now, with our friends from all over, a regular coffee or a lunch date, making time to chat, whether it is a common, I have a friend that I go out to dinner with every Wednesday night. It's that common time to chat. And I think too, even like talking about geography not being an issue, with video conferencing and video, I mean, sometimes Melissa and I we'll be texting about a challenge we're having, and we'll just jump on a meet so we can look at each other and feed off of one another and chat and do that. So thinking about those communities of practice, you can do that as well and get that information. And for busy educators, those communities of practice can be, I'm still so used to calling it Twitter, but like chats on Twitter, or X as it's now called, the Facebook groups that have popped up about topics. So that is a way for educators with common interests to unite and build their community of practice. And I like the idea when you get towards the end of the chapter, they talk about the school that implemented Wednesday walks. Definitely give that a look-see, because I really kind of liked how they did that. Similar to if you've seen like the pineapple charts in the schools where you're invited in to see what people are doing, but it's a little bit more formatted because there is that process of some feedback. So definitely give the Wednesday walks a look. And they talk about that it's just those schools that have been successful in building it up, they tap into, well, first of all, they build it into the fabric of the day. It just is part of the culture and the day that people have opportunities for this. But they've also tapped into the talented educators and the talented people that they have in their area to kind of build and grow that. And so whether you are doing this on your own local school campus or you're getting involved with a group that can become your community of practice, I think that's just a powerful tool in our hands. So the chapter was very short. I see Melissa has a thought.
I do. I have something I wanted to add because like that time, what was that, 7 years ago, Diana, that we were going to go find our coffee. And it was like from that, then, we got this, what is this Keep Indiana Learning, that let's apply for that. And then from that, it was like, well, what is this? Let's try for this. And, from that, that's how your circle expands. And then you grow other, you get to know other people. Like now we have Sarah, and I finally have somebody up here in my Northwest Indiana. And,
our ISTE group, when we were doing our ISTE
certification group. Together. And so it's almost like different circles that overlap who's in what circle. And I just feel like it just becomes such a strong connectedness to other educators. And now when something comes up, I feel like when I have a question, I always say to the people in my district, hold on, let me ask my people. And I'll just send out a text and I'll get an answer so fast from somebody. Whereas before it would be like, okay, I have to look this up. I have to Google it. I have to try and solve this problem on my own. And that comes from a strong community of practice that starts with just joining a group or being on an online community and just participating and putting yourself out there. And I think that that's what has to happen. You have to put yourself out there. You have to participate in an online chat. You have to go to a conference and talk to the person next to you. And that's what happens. And then from that, I did want to add another idea. Like I loved all the ones that Diana talked about, but I have a friend who does something that I never even realized it was as intentional as it is until she told me. And she schedules text check-ins with different people. And she said she even has it on her calendar of who she's going to text on each Sunday. And she schedules them. And so I'll get a text from her on a Sunday with a screenshot or a quote or how's it going for you today? And it'll have something motivating, and it just gets us thinking about our next big idea and what we're going to do next. And sometimes it's like, how's your day going? I know you're working on this. And it's like, how did you do this at the exact right time? Because it really helped me. And it's something that I really need to do for other people, because just getting that pop up for me, I'm like, oh, she was thinking about me. And then now I'm like, and I was on our calendar. But I just love it. And it's something that can really turn someone's day around with such a simple thing. The virtual coffee date and all of that and book study, those are bigger things, but a text is so small and so easy, but it goes back to that building relationships.
It's so powerful because when you feel like you matter to someone or something, that is empowering to you.
Yeah. Yep. And all it took is a text.
And a lot of times we're inspired to turn around and kind of deliver that same idea to someone else. So it kind of inspires you to continue it on to the next person.
Yep. So thanks to Amy for that one.
I love it. I had a feeling it was Amy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that actually is the meat and potatoes of chapter 8. And you know that one of our favorite parts is that it leaves us with a reflection or a question to think about. And there was one here. And since the chapter was so short and there were such good ideas, and I think we've kind of shared some of these, so we may have a little bit more to expand on. But as you are finishing reading, really think about this. Thinking about what are ways that you have nurtured your community of practice or one of your communities of practice, because you probably belong to several. And if your community of practice needs a little love, what are some concrete strategies in this chapter that you could implement? So we're all going to kind of take our turns. I'll wrap it up, but we're going to share some things that we have done just in the last little bit of our time together. So Melissa.
Okay, so one of the things that's newer is this year we have a Northwest Indiana instructional slash tech coaching group. And so that's one that I'm focusing on. I don't really have like if it needs a little bit love just because it's new. But I think that that's one that I'm focusing a little bit more on is just making sure that I'm attending to, making we work to add things to the agenda, and when we're there we're participating, and I think making sure that I'm an active participant in that group because it's new, and there are some people that are newer faces that I haven't seen in other groups. And so I think building new attendees up so that they feel more confident and that they want to return. I think that that's something that I am a little bit more attentive to in somebody maybe that's been there and also kind of been in several circles. So that's just a strategy that I am implementing.
I love that. Sarah, how about you?
So reading through this chapter made me think of some things that I wouldn't have thought as being like nurturing of our community of practice, but now that I think about it, it totally is. So one example that they gave in the text that really connected with me was this idea that if you don't know of a community that has a shared interest with you, it's totally possible to create one yourself. And it doesn't have to be on Twitter or X. It doesn't have to be on Facebook. It doesn't have to be a very big involved thing. It could just be a couple of teachers in your building who share an interest with you, and just being intentional about your time together and investigating an idea together. So we've had in my district, at a building that I worked at previously, we had a group of teachers. They were all different grade levels. We had electives like arts teachers, administrators, interventionists, all interested in getting better at teaching kids vocabulary. So we started a book study and went through this book together and used the chapters as kind of a structure to our meetups. And we didn't prepare slideshows or anything in advance. It was just a commitment that we would read a chapter before the next time we met. And we set aside, 20, 30 minutes a week. And, some weeks we were all really busy, so we couldn't. But it was this great opportunity to get to know more about our own colleagues that we otherwise probably wouldn't spend time together doing because we teach different grade levels or different subject areas. So you don't have to wait until there is a community for you. You can create one. Another that I'd love to share is the idea of, I know one of you guys had mentioned this earlier, this Wednesday walks idea. This is something that it's kind of been a personal dream of mine as an instructional coach for years to get started. When I was in the classroom, one of the things that I just was curious about was, how do the other teachers teach all this stuff? What are their little routines and things that work really well for them? So something I've always wanted to try, and I think that this book has given me motivation to kind of commit more to, is the idea of that Wednesday walk, or like some people call it a pineapple chart. But the idea that if I'm a visitor in someone's classroom, I'm willing to give feedback on whatever it is that the host teacher wants feedback on. So that way, not only am I getting information, but they're getting information too. So it's this reciprocity and this supporting one another, but in different ways. So there were a lot of other really good ideas in the text. And even though it's a super short chapter, I would totally check them out. But they gave so many good ways to foster this sense of community, and helping to create these strong communities of practice. The idea of like digging into UDL together, this book would be a great starting point for that. It could be a great book study that you do in your building or between you and a friend. And it could be the beginning of a much bigger thing.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. You can build your own community of practice based on that shared interest. And it can start small and it can grow. And like Melissa said, there's overlap in the circles. And because then I think the power of that is then the more you kind of get involved in one community and meet people, it can connect you to other communities that you would have that interest in. And then it's the, just like in the case of Melissa and I, or, I'm thinking about the people now. I always know I can reach out to Jenna and Joe and Kyle for something on Canvas. And I know that Melissa has a lot of knowledge on Power School. And all of those things, just like Melissa said, at the drop of a hat, I can reach out to somebody in my circle and get support or information I need. And Sarah, earlier when you talked about it being emotional work, that is so true because the emotions can drain you or they can feed you. And in any given day, we may experience both of those feelings. But to be alone all the time is hard because you don't have all the answers. So while that solitude can let you focus and feed you, having that community of practice available to you, it's just pretty incredible. So I think that kind of wraps us up. Either of you have anything else you want to contribute?
No, I know I say this every time, but I think this was such a good chapter and such a good reminder of the need for relationships, which is something we always say, but this was just an easy one to say, like, look, this is what we've been saying.
And it's okay to take time where I think sometimes people think, oh, that's what I'm going to put to the side, is making that time for the coffee chat or making the time to go to that book study or making the time to attend that Twitter. But that feeds your soul and builds you up and makes you better at your job. So don't be afraid to take that time for yourself and do those things that are going to improve your practice.
Absolutely.
Totally.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to join us for this chapter. We appreciate Sarah for being with us today to talk about chapter 8. And, if this is the first time you've joined us, you know that we have all of these collected in a YouTube playlist. You can scan the QR code right there, and it will take you to the whole collection of chapters. And next, in 2 weeks, we're going to be back with our very last chapter in this book study. And it's going to wrap up Keep Indiana Learning's first foray into this slow book study style. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you for that last chapter in a couple weeks. And we wish you all a fantastic start to this holiday season.